children. And now on top of this, you've got all these people trying to make this right. I often said the other day, George, what if this was Obama? What if this was you? What if this was anybody else? You watch these political people attempt to twist this and make it all right, when in fact the fact is the so-called white evangelicals, I call them Republican extreme religionists now, who are supporting this kind of backwards, unchristian policies, they have actually emboldened and created a place where persons can come forth with this kind of twisted theology and believe you're going to support them no matter what, because they've been supported on so many other non-Christian pieces of public policy. And let me say this, I'm not saying this as a religious person on the left or on the right. I believe in the prophetic moral center. I'm an independent by registration, a voter registration. We are seeing a non-Christian movement being perpetrated as a massive hoax on the American public, and it is as old as the magicians of Pharaoh against Moses, the prophets, as old as the Pharisees against Jesus, as old as what Frederick Douglass called the slave master's religion versus the religion of Christ. And if we don't understand that it's always been a part of the American construct, then we misinterpret and our analysis is not deep enough.
Yeah, and indeed. And on that note, I want to bring in Jason Johnson, who is the politics editor of TheRoot.com. You write a lot about these issues because at a certain point, what I think a lot of people don't understand, Jason, is how raw self-interest doesn't overcome this. These are the same people who are cutting out health care, who are taking away living wages, who are denying minimum wage increases, who are saying we will leave you poorer. We refuse to let you have higher wages. You cannot have health care or Medicaid. The same people who are saying we will now boldly cut the richest people's taxes and raise yours so that we can afford it for them. When does raw self-interest overcome this decamping to a religious sort of diktat that doesn't even fit the sort of plain text of the Bible?
It never does, Joy. And that's the thing that I think people, sometimes on the left and even on the right, don't seem to understand. You know, I'm a political scientist, and everyone always says, you know, people vote their pocketbooks. No, they don't. They vote their values. They will eat their values. They will starve with their values. And their values drive everything they do. You go back to George Wallace. When I talked about policy, it didn't work. When I started talking about black people, that's when they start stamping their feet. So that's what drives this. That's what drives the people who support Roy Moore. It's not just religion. It's also they hate women. You have to fundamentally hate women to not believe a 14-year-old girl that says I was assaulted because this guy goes trolling for dates at custody hearings when he's a lawyer, right? So, I think the key to this is, look, we've always had this element in society. We've always had sick people. We've always had loathsome people. Now they have a sign. Now they have a guidepost in the President of the United States. And what we have to recognize is that, hey, we're in a free country. Everybody can have that belief system. Let's stop trying to convince those people to join the rest of moral society and instead function on uplifting and supporting those people who recognize what the future needs to be.
Yeah, and by the way, Democrats vote their values and not their pocketbooks either. If you live in New York, or you live in New Jersey, or you live in Connecticut, you are affirmatively voting to raise your own taxes constantly.
Exactly.
Because the values of the party that you prefer are more important to you than your pocketbook. I mean, neither party vote their pocketbook, right? Really.
Yeah, and that's always been the case. And it's this myth that, you know, it's driven by the economy. Look, you know, the economy could be terrible next year, and you will still have tons of people who will vote for Donald Trump.
That is correct.
People can look at this tax plan and realize it's, you know, how many different pointless, cloying stories can we read about poor Ohioans? And I was an Ohio voter saying, yeah, I didn't think Trump was really going to take all this stuff from me, but I'm going to vote for him anyway.
That's exactly
it's preposterous.
Or I know he's not bringing back coal, and I don't care.
I mean, care.
We keep having the New York Times and everyone else going down to these Rust Belt cities and trying to sort of figure out what it is that peels these folks away. They will say, we know he's not reopening the factory. I'm getting laid off, and I still support him.
And I've said this, it's a piece, it's literally, I have it pinned on Twitter. Trump's supporters will never, ever leave him. They never will, under any circumstances. And the reason why there's core, because I think his core party, the core support that he has, you know, that 25, that 30%, they're nihilists. They already think America is done. They already think this country is over. They just want to go down swinging.
Yeah,
and he's their temper tantrum.
And I'm going to go back really quickly just to, I want to get everybody else in, but there is an apocalyptic element to it, Frank Schaeffer. There's a sense that they're already in this cosmic struggle, that speeding toward the apocalypse. So I think that to a certain extent, Jason is right. There are people for whom these economic issues just are so secondary to that apocalyptic vision anyway.
Yeah, if you look at the theology of some of the white evangelicals that support Trump, let's start with him because that's the big story. Their vision of the future is a very grim one, and essentially their idea is that they are a persecuted remnant of true believers, and now you mix in a racial element after an 8-year black presidency that denies everything that their core racist beliefs hold on to. What Reverend Barber was talking about, this kind of slave master theology, that has been denied in a documentary sense to them that has enraged them. And so I completely agree. Their view is not to build a healthy future. Look, the healthy future is sitting around that table with you. There are black faces there. There are white faces there. There are Asian faces. You've got one token old white fart here who repents his past right-wing stupidity. But that said, I look at what's around your table and I say, if two lines were forming, I would be running in that direction. That's the healthy, hopeful, redemptive future, and you've got it sitting at that table with you.
Absolutely.
But here's a more challenging message, and it's one. Jason's, of course, right. You never change the mind of the base. No one ever loses elections because of the base. The way you win elections is by moving people from the middle.
Yeah.
And this is what you're going to see happening or not happening in Alabama, which is Roy Moore's a weak candidate. If the National Democratic Party had let Doug Jones run as a moderate, not a liberal, this seat would be winnable.
We'll see. We'll see. That race is essentially tied. David Frum, Kurt Bardella, Jason Johnson, Frank Schaefer, Bishop William Barber, Caton Dawson. Karina's going to be back. Thank you, guys. Great panel. And up next...